Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to have a fiddle with my phone to see what's happened. That's currently not telling me I'm live. It'll take its inevitable bit for catch up, I suspect, because this is what happens. Always takes a bit, and I've gone live just ahead of 6 o'clock, so that's also cool. Brilliant, that should pick that up. Then I can pick up comments. I just need to swap some bits around on StreamYard, which is Pentart's preferred streaming platform. So let me move that. And then we can, then we're all set. Hopefully life will be good and we'll have no problems. I can see from that I've got 8 or 9 people in watching. Can someone just confirm that you can see and hear me without too many problems? Good evening, Anthony. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's much appreciated. Before I start, we're just going to let everything roll round till 6 o'clock because that's only fair, because that's the advertised start time. Good morning, Esther. Thank you. Oh, good evening, Esther. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's much appreciated. I know that in the UK it's 6 o'clock in the evening, so that's a good time to be at kids' meal times in the UK, but perhaps not in the rest of the world. Hello, Rosa. Thank you. Thanks, Anthony, for letting me know everyone can see. Hello, Imarani. Hello, Laurie from the USA. Good evening, Juliana. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That's cool. The numbers clicking on are getting there, and we've just clicked past 6 o'clock. So my plan for this evening is to alter a box and then do some bits to go inside the box as well. I'm using lots of Pentart products, and as requested by Pentart, I am opting to use Stamperia paper products and molds rather than other companies' products. So that's where we're heading this evening. Hello, Idiko. Welcome, my darling. Thank you so much. Good evening, Rennie, joining us from the USA. So let me just pop some of this away because I've got some plans. And one of the things that really, really drives me mad is people using products and not explaining why they're using what and when. Because I think that doesn't help. Good evening, Sue. Thank you for joining us, my darling. So I have out 1, 2, 3 different primers, all by Pentart. And you can say, why on earth would a company have 3 different primers? So I'm going to try and sort that one out now so people know why I use what I use and when I use it. Because it's a waste of expensive products to use them for the wrong purposes, although they will all double up to some extent. And I'll explain which would be my preferred go-to if I am going to double up. So I have a cardboard box here. Good evening, Karen. Good evening, Jan. Thank you. Here, and it is cardboard. So this is an absorbent surface, and I'm intending using acrylic paints with this. So to prime my box, I am going to choose the acrylic primer by Pentart, which is white. So that seems logical to me. If I've got a porous surface that things are going to work well with, and I'm going to be using acrylic paints, to me it's logical that I prime with just that material. The only caveat would be is if I'm wanting black or a metallic, and then I would use the black primer paste because metallic show better on black. But this is a fairly liquid product that will seal my surface and work well on any porous surface, meaning that you don't have to use your the others for doing that. And the reason I'm opting to use this instead of the ordinary gesso is that it is a thinner medium, so it spreads more evenly and more easily. The primer paste absolutely has its purposes, and will certainly cover lots of things, but this is my preference for when I'm working with a porous surface, is to use and then acrylic paints, is to use the acrylic primer for doing that. So you didn't need to see me doing the whole of that, so I have done a little bit of prep on this piece and covered the rest of the box already. So that can sit there and that can go in the box. There we are. Now put that on the floor just to dry in front of the fan heater. And I apologise if you can hear the noise, but my craft room is freezing. So my next step is I'm going to use the primer paste. Now this is a really thick paste, and you can use it as a primer on lots of different surfaces, including your non-porous surfaces, quite successfully. But my preference is going to be, let me just grab some spray, is going to, because it is a thick paste, instead of watering it down, I'm actually going to use it instead of modelling paste to give some texture, which of course is also quite a helpful activity. So I'm just going to just put some spray on there. It's already primed with the acrylic primer. Good evening, Arkelis. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Miriam. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, Blanche. Hello, Sheila. Good evening, Elaine. Thank you very much. And hello, Robinson. And I hope I didn't miss you, Liz, but if I did, I apologise and welcome. There we are. So I want to add a little bit of texture to this piece. And on a live, this is quite helpful to use the primer paste. It's not as thick maybe as using a proper modelling paste, but it will dry a bit quicker for me, and that makes life easier too. So that's the rationale behind it. Some of this in the centre is going to be covered, the edges are going to be on display. And as it's a paste, you can apply it over things like bottles if you're going to be priming a bottle, and you can build up a degree of layer. So let's just get rid of that. I now have a layer of texture in that primer paste that can sit on the floor to dry, and that can go in there and we'll lid that piece. As you say, it's a really nice thick consistency. So if you're needing something and a short of pennies, then your primer paste that will allow you to prime most surfaces and act as a stencil paste at the same time is a really good product to have in your stash. I just need to get this clean, so bear with me, because otherwise I'll have a stencil that is useless before long, if I don't just get off this there. The stencil is from Stamperia and from the Precious collection. I think there's probably fairly similar ones in their perfume collection as well. Just pick, I'm choosing a floral because and it's rose based because I said I was going to do a Valentine's keepsake piece. So I thought that was an appropriate imagery for the project that I'm making. And then we have some extra bits and pieces, and I'm not going to prime these live, and I'm going to say why. So my resin, which is a non-porous surface, can technically be painted straight from having been cast, but that's not my preference, because I think you get better longevity if you don't do that. So one of the things with the bonding primer is you need to apply a layer, and it needs to dry properly through and through. and it does take quite a while. So the pieces I did this afternoon have still got some wet areas, so I'm going to have to give those a blast dry. So bear with me because we need those to be dry. She says, just trying to pick up her and not burn herself on the glue gun that is equally on the floor. Here we are. And the other thing to say is, in an ideal world, you would use 2 layers to make sure you had your piece completely covered. And then you'll find it's very difficult to scratch things off. Good evening, Joan. Hello, Teresa. Thank you for joining me. I know it's sort of relatively early in the States, isn't it, at the moment? Good evening, Denise. I don't think I've seen you before. If I have and I've forgotten, I do apologise. Hello, Joe. And Joe is based in beautiful South Wales. It is so lovely to see so many people online with me this evening. It's so much appreciated that people give up their time to do this. Hello, Idiko. Welcome. So these molds, these pieces all come from one Stamperia mold, and it is the Stamperia mold that comes with Blue Land or Roseland collection. So again, it is still relatively, it is easily available, I think, at the moment from whoever is your Stamperia supplier. And of course, there are many options, I think, in most countries for that. I just need the depth of this to dry. We might be able to pop that again, that one on the floor again in a minute. It's not completely dry. So I've got some elements that I'm going to be putting back to back, and some elements that are staying free form, which is why I've got 3 of what essentially looks like the same piece out. I'm very definitely not going to be doing them all the same, and so we're going to have some simple painting techniques for these. We're going to do that. So I know that I am going to be using mixtures of blues and pinks and beiges. So I have chosen a rice paper. Let me get it out of here, so you can then see why I've picked the colours that I have picked for my make. And we are going to add some extra details. So this is an old rice paper from methinks possibly Sleeping Beauty. Anyway, it's an old one, and it's got blues, pinks and beiges in it. So those are the colours that we're going for in this piece. So I'm going to pop that over on the side, but that's my colour palette. So I have turquoise green for some of them, because my intention is to paint the lid of the box with pink. Let's just stick that a bit nearer. So I'm going to layer my different pieces together. So this is a Decor Paint Soft Chalky in turquoise green, and quite often some of these colours will split when they are in their pots, especially in storage and transit. Don't let them freeze, because that's never good for any of your acrylics. But if there is medium that's clear on the top, then just give it a good mix in. You can wipe off the rest of that back into there. I can then pop this into my brush, pop that over there out of harm's way. So we're going to have 2 blue, and this is a really, really pretty bluey green. So we'll just add this, and again, it's not going to stay all of that colour, because that would be boring, wouldn't it, to have it all one colour. But we have got some bits of painting to do this evening, and we'll tackle stuff in layers as we go. And this is what I do when I am creating at home, offline. I have a plan as to where I'm going, what I'm doing. Yes, it does evolve. I'm not going to say it doesn't, because that would not be fair. But I sort of have an idea of where I'm going, what I'm doing, and I'm linking my colours to, if I'm using papers, the colours in that paper palette, because that again seems to make sense. This turquoise green is a beautiful, beautiful colour. It has to be said. And it is a green, but it's definitely got a blue hue to it. So it's softer than, it's not a, it's not a green, which I have got out because clearly leaves are green, aren't they? But there we are. And you can see that because I have my bonding primer on here, the colour is not beading on my surface. If I try just putting it on a plain side piece of resin, then it, the chalk paints will bead and won't cover very well. So that's where we're going with this, and we'll carry on and do that. So that's that one. And I know I actually happen to want two of these coloured in this, and then we're going to have some swapping away from this blue colour in a minute. I might grab the box while I've got this out to do the inside of the box, because that also, if you're doing a project, you want it to be complete through and through. That's front, back, sides, bottoms, anything that could be picked up and seen needs to be covered. I might draw a line at the bottom of the box on the live tonight, because you could be here until the cows come home if we do that. And much as, I just think it's unreasonable to be online for huge amounts of times, though undoubtedly it will be more than an hour, I think, because most of my makes are more than an hour long. But you can always watch on rewind if you want to. That's never a problem to do that. And I'm going to end up with icky mucky fingers, and that's also just fine. There we are. So let's just pop that down, and grab the box on the inside. I don't want it on the outside because I'm going to be popping some rice papers onto that. So let me just then add this. And because I have used my acrylic primer on here, I'm going to manage to cover this with one layer of the blue paint, that without, or the turquoisey green, without it sinking in, and I shall get a nice even coverage. And that is the joy of using a primer on your products. So there we are. Let's just pop these into here. There we are. So I hope that everyone is well. So I can see that actually, my craft room is very cold, and I primed inside this box about 2 o'clock this afternoon, and in the depths, in the corners where it's puddled a little bit, I've obviously still got some primer drying, but that's okay. We'll deal with that. And I can, of course, take a heat gun to any of these products, because that is the joy of the Pentart mediums. Of course, they are pretty much all heat stable. In fact, I don't think there's any that are not particularly heat stable. Some of them are just better off left to dry naturally. So let's just pop this into here, do the base of here, and then it can dry, and then we can have a little bit of a tidy up from the blue paint. Let's just add a little bit around the top of there. There we are. I'm not going to turn it over to do the base. I would do that off the live, because otherwise we can be here for an awful long time. So to protect my paint, I'm going to pop my lid back on now and cover everything up. Thank you, Archangel. Lovely to see you here, my darling. It's so much appreciated. It is really appreciated. And there we are. We'll pop that into there. I think it's lovely when fellow creatives can support each other, particularly when there's utter madness going on in this wide world of ours. So let's pop that bonding primer out of the way, because it's just going to give me a bit more room. I can do that And then I'm wanting to have, again, linking in with my project, I'm wanting to have some pinks. And I have chosen here the Deco Paint Chalky in Victorian Pink. And I'm going to mix across with an ordinary acrylic matte paint, because I'm wanting to have a slightly darker colour than this pale pink. And that's the importance, isn't it? When you are creating for yourself, you can mix your products so that you get what you want. So let's just push this lot off here onto my mat, and then I can clean this down. I'm not going to be wasting any of that lot. That can go there. We might waste what's on that brush, but hey ho. And then we can get out some of this. Now this is red wine, which is my current favourite red. It is a bit brighter than the Bourdon, which is also a colour that I love. And I probably won't need to add a huge amounts of that. So let's just stick that into there. Pop that on there. And then I'm going to wipe my sticky mucky messes of my hands. Hello, Dolly. Thank you very much for those lovely words. It's lovely. It's nice to see people coming in. There we are. So there we are. Let's get that, because otherwise I'm going to have green paint when I don't want it, which is always a lovely look, but maybe not as much. So Elaine, what's Joe saying that I would share with you, my darling? Please just I'll put an extra comment, because I missed that when it went live. One of the headaches, ladies, of crafting live and yeah, and having lots of comments is actually quite difficult to keep track of everything that's being said. And I'd hate anyone to think that I'm being rude. So this has allowed me to get a slightly brighter colour, which I think is going to work perfectly and is more in keeping with the tone of that. Aha, okay. So Elaine, the resin mould, the heart mould is from Stamperia. It is from the Blue Land collection, so their release, I think in November, possibly November. Yeah, I think November, could have been December's release. It's got lots and lots of beautiful elements. This heart, this one, and the flower icons are all part of that collection. So it's a nice usable mould. I think that molds should earn their place in your stash. So this is a mold that you could use for Valentines, for weddings, for celebrations, for new babies, for love, for engagements. Just because you want something pretty, even. Lots and lots of uses for it. It has got a relatively small aperture. And if that was, if I had one gripe about molds, is that quite often they look very pretty, but the functional space for putting an image in is maybe not so great. But you find a way and you pick an image that's easy. And the little selfie cameras that sort of print the small images will often work, though they'll often produce a nice image that's about the right size for many of these smaller apertured molds. And it's quite difficult, isn't it, to measure and say exactly how big a heart-shaped mold is, because it depends on the direct dimensions and the direction you are measuring in. So there we are. So that's what we're going to do there. Let's pop that onto there. Put that under my hands, which is always good. And I'm keeping the paintwork relatively simple for these. We are going to be adding some layers coming forward onto these. It's a very, very pretty colour. Very, very pretty colour. And that's what I thought for a Valentine's S project. My husband and I long since gave up bothering celebrating Valentine's Days. We love each other dearly, and we've been married for 30 plus years now. We don't need a special day to celebrate that, because we tell each other we love each other every single day without fail. But I do think romantic colours are beautiful, and so for me, this is a piece that will sit better within my home decor than if I had chosen something maybe in bright red. Now then, I know that I did there's a piece that I did for Pentart that has flowers on it, and at least one person asked about the colours that I'd used, and it was a custom combination, which is lovely, but it's quite difficult to say. So I have very specifically got an angled brush here. If we look at it, it's an oblique-ended brush, and that means that I can add colours on two different sides of that. I can wipe them together, and I've got some inbuilt shading, and whether it all worked brilliantly is another matter. But it's going to, with a bit of luck, allow me to have flowers that are not all the same colour, because I'm building in natural colour variation relatively simply, just by loading the two colours on my brush. Now, if you'd watched the fabulous Liz the other night, you'll know that she's a whiz at one stroke painting. So not my skill set, but this will allow me to get some different colours into my piece. So that will work for me quite happily. I've got some leaves on the edge of here, so I definitely know that I need to have that into there. We'll have the darker colour into the centre of the rose, and then we can shade it out. And I can always add more colour or more shading with some dry brushing if I want to. So that's the joy, isn't it, again, of making for yourself. I don't particularly want these to be bright red, because the papers definitely don't have a bright red in them. They are shades of pink. But this has given me lots and lots of colour variation by doing this. And I think you could do this with pretty much any mould if you wanted to. So let me just reload this, because it was getting a bit contaminated, and that's because, as I say, I'm not a one stroke painter, but I can this way add colours where I want it. So if I want some darker colours, I've predominantly got the dark into there. If I want paler colours, I can add those out to the side. I can double load or not, as the case may be, and I can then link this through and out. And not to have them too muddied together. I want a bit more red into the centre of those flowers, so that I'm just going to pick up on the edge of that brush that red and push it into where I want that darker colour. That seems to me to be a logical place, and it's where the shadows would be, isn't it? So there we are. We'll pop that into there, and then we can work with the softer colours and cover our areas. Want it a bit softer, so there we are. We'll add in some softer colours into here, and by the time you've got all of theirs that you add, actually there'll be no sharp transitions, because there aren't sharp transitions in nature, but we'll have added some nice detailing in relatively simply to our moulded piece, if that makes any sort of sense to everyone. Let's just add a little bit onto there. There we are. And I'm going to then let that dry a little bit. So let me pop that into there. So I'm going to give these a little bit of a whiz dry, she says, because I want to do the leaves and I'm not going to manage to do them and not spread all of that pink around. So let's just concentrate on these. Give these a little bit of a blast dry so at least I can pick them up without contaminating everything with every other colour, because it's going to be much easier for me. Just give these a little bit of a waft at the same time, which from that point of view is lovely. Thank you, Betty. It's lovely to see you, and I'm glad you like the mould and the choice of colours. Good evening, Marisol. It'll be there for you to see whenever you can, my darling. It really, life has to carry on, doesn't it? We all have to work. We all have to pay the bills. And our hobby is just that, something for our sanity in our own time. I do need all of these to get right. Good evening, Lorraine. Thank you, my darling. I don't know if you've picked up the comment I put on your post today. You shared a picture of a delivery, and I could read your address really carefully, my darling. And I would hate for it to get into the wrong hands. So maybe it might be worth reposting, but obscuring your address so that the evil individuals on who try to scam people. Thank you, Lorraine. I'm glad you've seen it. I just worry about things like that, and I will always try. Nice clean heat gun. Karen, you sarcastic monkey. Yes, it's a very clean, not sarcastic. So a lot of the ladies here will know the story between my heat guns. I have had 3 of the quieter Ranger heat guns, all of which have blown up on me within guarantee periods. And so I refuse to buy another one. So noisy heat gun that's reliable and doesn't blow up on me, I'm afraid, is the order of the day. Because really, I just think that it's crazy that a very well-known brand would have such an issue. So I think they are in the process of sorting it. So there we are. Let's just give these a bit of a dry. We're getting there. There we are. We are going to be adding some more layers to those, so those can sit and carry on. I'm just going to mop this. I'm not going to mop that up. I'm going to pick up the red, this one now, because I'm wanting this to be a nice pink colour too. The inside will be blue, but I will do the inside of the lid later. So remember, this is the lid that has been primed with the acrylic primer, and then I have applied the gesso paste through stencil from Samperia featuring roses, because they're the flowers love, at least they are in the UK, and I've got the roses on, or pretty flowers, in the moulds elsewhere. And I said that one of the joys of gesso was that it dries quite quickly, and you can see that that is pretty dry now, so that's cool from that point of view. So I'm just going to now give this a little bit of a coat. I could put a woody bend trim or maybe some velvet powder around this at a later time, but for now that's not where my brain is when it comes to this piece. And it doesn't have to be all a single cut though, it needs to be tonal, so that's also fine, and I will no doubt end up with mucky fingers. But if you do the edges of your piece first, then you're less likely to end up with contaminated fingers and moving stuff around. Of course, it is all perfectly retraceable. So let's just add this onto here, because mixed media is, as you know, all about adding layers and dimension and texture to your pieces. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be brown and grungy, though if that's your style, it absolutely can be. I'm going to need to pick up some more of that pale pink, I think, and pop some more of that out. So there we are. We'll be naughty. We'll mix some of that in with that. There we are. Metal cutout here from Penta. What can I use on a metal cutout? So if you're working with metal, I would use some bonding primer. Pop that up. Give it a good clean with an alcohol-based cleaner of some description. Let it dry. Get rid of any grease that might be on it, because that is always going to impede anything from sticking onto your pieces. This piece in the middle is going to be covered. I would then give it a thin coat of the Penta bonding primer. This one, my darling. Let it dry overnight and then add another layer with a dauber the following day and let it dry again. And you can force dry it, but my preference would always be with metal things would be to walk away from it and leave it to dry naturally for 24 hours, minimum of 12 hours. You'll find that you just get it dries then through completely, as opposed to being surface dry, and then when you try to work with it, it then moves out. So fit for outside. So whatever you're doing for outside, my darling, once it's been decorated, then you need to seal it properly with an outdoor varnish. And any reliable outdoor varnish will work just as well. So paint with your standard mediums and then give it at least 2 coats of an outdoor varnish to be safe, and you should be fine. I wouldn't guarantee that it will withstand lots of frost, and but if you think about it, house paints and things are paints, and they do survive outside, but they've got their waterproof binders inside of it, if that makes sense. So now then, let's just pop that over there and pop that over there. And I'm keeping tonally within this sort of muted grade background detailing. I am going to use this, which is a Decor Paint Soft Chalky in Thorn, but they do matte versions of this quite happily. It's a multicoloured heat gun. You lot have been very sarcastic tonight. I really love it. But yes, it is a very multicoloured heat gun. Indeed. But that's fine. So now I can keep my leaves relatively simple and bring out the details in those just by giving them that little touch of green. And I'm not mithered tonight about having lots of different shading in my leaves. It will happen naturally with some of the other products that we're going to be using. There we are. So let's just add this to here. I have to say, I think the thorn so in winter I use the pine for lots of things, and in the summer I tend to use the thorn colour as it's a softer muted green rather than a bright, and that's my preference for colour palettes. But if you like brights, then there are plenty of more brighter tones in the Pentacolor catalogue that you can use. So yeah, so let's pop that over there. Let's stick those out of the way, because we're going to have more stuff out here than we know what to do with imminently. Right, yuck. Let's pop that down there. It's just going on the floor by a heater so that I can carry on with this. Again, real time, real life. What would I do? I'd walk away and let it do its own thing. And I am going to shortcut at this point, ladies. So and I will explain why I'm going to shortcut. And then you can do your own thing depending on your preference. So I'm reasonably happy, apart from the fact that I've got blue on the outside, that I've got a white background. If you are very particular, then paint this again with a white acrylic. So this is the cream white Decor paint. So chalky, they do there's a Titan white as well. So there's lots of different shades of white that you can do. Now this rice paper has got an edge, and I know, and it's also got a direction, and I know that I'm going to have to patch it to get all the way around. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a pair of scissors and chop off the side along here, because I don't want that. Although it is decorative, when I try to layer it together, it's going to be a nuisance. So I'm just going to chop quite a lot of this off. So it's quite a good, it's a, you know, it's nice to be able to, and I could just watercut this, but again, when I'm covering edge to edge, it's not something I overtly worry about. Partly because one side is going into the V of the heart. There we are. She says, with the naffest pair of scissors that she could possibly find. Let's try a different pair of scissors. Yeah, let's see, that's better. So I can then get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that edge. Cool. And we'll do the same on the other side and on the top. So let me just take this down here. We will have a little bit of fraying on this edge. It's up on one of the edges. There we are. So let's get rid of that, because that's going to be in the way. I'm going to say this is quite an old rice paper, but you just pick the rice paper that works with the collection and that you're using, and then have fun layering and adding. Just be mindful of the orientation, you know, of the things. I find that most rice papers are portrait, and most images that I want to use are places I want to use it on a landscape. So that's very, very, very frustrating. Hello, Josephine. Welcome, my darling. Hello, Sarah. So this is going to go into here, around there. So I pop that like that. I know I want that like that. I want it matched up at the edges, and I'm not mithered about an overlap. So I'm just going to have a little snip there, because that's going to allow me to grab a paper trimmer, because that's all I'm doing, and chop an edge off. Yeah, and then I can know how big it is, and then I've got the same for the other side. So that's going to go into there, and that is, for my box, that works out at 3.5 inches. So for the ladies who are in Europe and don't work in inches, that is 9.3 centimeters. And you just need to make sure that you get that in there reasonably straight, and then I can cut that, and then I can take another layer, because I know I'm going to need at least 2 of these to get around my box, and I can cut another piece. And hopefully, well, there we are. Have we managed to do that accurately? Yeah. But we've clearly decided we're doing far too much there, because who's a wombat? Yeah, so there we are. Let's just pop that onto there, pop that onto there, pop that there. We'll just chop that end off that. Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma, isn't it? So, and I'm a very literal-minded individual, so if it's meant to be vertical, it has to be there. Don't worry, Betty. Don't worry, Betty. I'm sure I'll see you on live later on tonight. So I now have 2 pieces of paper that will allow me to come around here. Let's just trim that nasty bit off there. It's going onto a straight edge. and somewhere here. So I have out on my surface some decoupage glue. So this is the Pentar Decoupage Varnish and Glue, and it is the silky shine version. You could just as happily use the matte if you wanted a matte finish. You could use the glitter quite happily on the top. I wouldn't recommend ever using the glitter as the undersurface because it's got a texture and that might not be what you wanted. But beyond that, yeah, lots of options. I'm using cardboard, so this is the papercraft one. There's a fabric one if you're working on fabric, and of course there is a textile, a ceramic one if you want to bake your product so that it is waterproof and will go through the dishwasher. And the instructions for those can all be found online on Pentart's lovely YouTube channel, just literally by googling how to use Pentart and then the name of the medium, you'll get where you want to be. So this is why I didn't need a torn edge at this end, because it's tucking it right into that edge. I'm just going to feed that round here, hopefully having it reasonably straight. She says, having not got it reasonably straight, because boxes are never reasonably straight, are they? We'll just repop that into there, she says. Come on, there we are. Pop that in and then follow it around the edge, and I can trim off the top and I can trim off the bottom. So let me just ease out the wrinkles from having lifted that up. I can pop those out. There we are. Pop it down, pop it around. I'm not overly worried about wrinkles, but if you are, then take a plastic bag and use that to smooth them all out. Okay, now it would be very obvious to have a join on that point, and it would also be a point where you might then find that things catch, and that's maybe not what you want. So at this point, I'm now going to just shred this piece of paper, give myself a little bit of a rough edge, lift that down, and then I can smooth that down, and I will go back round and do the other side, and then I can take my next piece that I want to add into here, and again I'm just going to give it a little bit of a rough edge because these will help disguise it. Good evening, Alison. Don't you worry about being late, my darling. It's perfect. Life has to carry on, isn't it? And we're all busy. And then I will need to do a bit of cutting at that end, and that's fine. So let us just eyeball that onto there. I'm not going to press that down. I think I need that to be approximately there. So I'm just going to give that a little bit of a little straight edge, because that for me is going to work. But if it doesn't work for you, then fray all of the edges. There we are. And that's going to help blend that. And have I cut enough? No, I haven't cut enough. Why would you cut a big enough piece? That on a life, really. That's just why it goes, isn't it? But does it matter? No, because we can do a bit more patching. There we are. Or we can take it off and just cut another piece. But actually, we're reasonably well into there by lifting that. There we are. So let's just give this a little coat, or a thick coat, of the decoupage glue and varnish. So this will help seal it in. I'm going to scrape some of this off, pop it back in my pot because I've got way too much on here. There we are. Long term, I'm not going to see that join, and I can then pop this over to here. Just give it all, and not all. Sorry, ladies, if that's making you feel seasick. Take this off. Don't really find. I have managed to get air bubbles in here, but take your time and don't rush is the key lesson for this one. There we are. probably is going to be a shabby project. So there we are. So that can go down on the floor for the drying onto there. No problem, Karen, no problem at all. And then we'll just clear up that glue before we end up in a icky, sticky, tacky mess, because icky, sticky, tacky messes is not good. It's not good at all. So let us pull up these pieces. Tell you what we need to do. We can do whilst these are drying is we're going to add a layer of blue paint on this into the center of here, because that's what happens in real life, isn't it? You have to move about between things. Let's see if I got it. No, we'll just grab a clean paintbrush. You should see when I'm doing those like this, I've got heavens only knows how many paintbrushes in a pot of water by the end of the day, and then they need to be cleaned and brush guards put on them to protect them while they dry. Am I good at using brush guards? That will be an absolute no, but do I recommend it? Absolutely yes. It's a case of do as I say in this circumstance, not do as I do. There we are. Let's just add that into here. Because that's going to allow me to have a finished piece long term. There we are. We'll put wax on the edges of this ultimately, and that will disguise if I've missed pieces quite nicely. There we are. Let's just get this all covered. So that it at least looks sort of professional. There we are. So that can go there. Yes, another brush goes in there, and that can come out. So those are over there. Oh, I'm sorry, ladies, but we do now have a drying session required. It's a beautiful colour, Alison. I look forward to seeing what you've been doing with them. So these now all need to be dried. That one is dry. That one, those two are dry. The depths of these ornamental moulds are not. I think we all use that motto, Sarah. Let me just put that, because we're going to have out some antiquing gel in a minute. And I've chosen to use one of the older antiquing gels rather than one of the shimmer ones, because I'm going to add some shimmer paint over the top for dry brushing. So I just felt it would be better with the ordinary ones. And if I'm going to take an antiquing gel for these, I absolutely need this paint to be dry, because otherwise all that will happen is it will smur. Hello Beverly, thank you so much for joining me. That's lovely to see. Good evening, Tina. No, also welcome for joining me this evening. And hello Lena from Greece. I haven't seen you come in. The joy of being able to dry stuff on a live is it allows me to catch up and see what else is going on. And make sure that I haven't overtly going rude by not saying hello to anyone. It's I say it's really, every time I go live, I think, I wonder if anyone will bother watching me tonight, or whether I'm going to be crafting for myself. So it's always gratifying when I see people coming on to support me. And as I thoroughly enjoy using the Pentacolor brand. So it's never ever a chore to work with these fabulous products. Which is good. Still got bits that are needing to dry. So whenever your heat gunning things dry, what happens is it looks like it's dry, the surface is dry, but underneath isn't dry, and then you take the heat gun away, and the surface re-moistens. So You just have to be patient and go back and forth over things. Or, I'd say, go and find yourself a drink, a cup of tea, go and have a bath, do whatever you want to do, but rather than standing around with a heat gun. But these will heat gun reasonably quickly. My craft room is absolutely Sarah. It's absolutely freezing at the moment. I have got a heater on by me, but the overall temperature in here is definitely freezing. There we are. Are we getting there? Well, not quite in the recesses, I'm afraid. But we will. We will. We will get there. Okay. So I'm going to pop. That one's dry. That one's dry. That one's dry. I'm going to pop those over there, close to those. That can do that. So excuse the noise, ladies. Let me just change what's happened on my screen. It doesn't take much for me to be confused when it comes to technology. So let's pop that there, drying those. So this is Pentart's antiquing gel. This is my first pot of antiquing gel. So you can see that it goes a long way. Let's just grab a clean brush because we've run out of brushes. We've run out of my big brushes. So let's just abuse that will do, a brush. So I'm going to add some white antiquing gel onto here. Now the joy of this is that it has a waxy component into it, and so it will help seal the piece. Again, if something is going to be handled a lot, then my advice will always be to seal it with a proper varnish afterwards. But if it's not really going to be handled a lot, then you'll get away with it just with the antiquing gel. And then you want a damp, not wet cloth, and you can then just wipe back across the surface and as much as you want. But you do need to wipe it back while it is wet, and it's just going to soften that pink quite a lot. So here we are. You can see that I've got a much softer pink, and I can then wipe this back a little bit, and again it's going to give me that shabby effect where I lift it off, and that's the look that I'm wanting. There we are. Let's just do the same. Ooh, she says, with these pieces. Make sure you get it into the nooks and the crannies, because you're lifting it off the surface rather than leaving it on the surface. So there we are. Okie dokie. Let me scroll down. Hello Anna, what's all you girls and nice places and do up to? I was just in my basement cleaning up some stuff and you can wait and now folding. Well, that's well, yes, when we're doing housework, we all absolutely need a distraction. I regularly clean up my craft space and donate excess stuff to needy causes. I just think it's if I'm not going to use it, then it might as well go to someone who can. Playing with my new 8 colours Pentacolor waxes. Very good. Yes, I think you chose some beautiful Pentacolor waxes. And ladies, I've noticed that the cost, Pentacolor haven't said that the base cost of the waxes has gone up, but I have noticed that a lot of the retailers with their new stocks, that green was still wet and that wasn't helpful, have increased the prices of their waxes. So if you can get them now whilst they're on sale at the cheaper price, it might be a good idea to have a little look and see. Might not apply in the rest of the world, but certainly in the UK. So there we are. We've now got some added interest into those pieces. So let's just carry on. Oh, she says, losing. That's what happens when you have a cheap brush. You start losing these. So which 3 new waxes did you get? Oh, there we are. We'll add some of these onto here. You could just help with the details. Oh, thank you, Elaine. That's such a lovely, lovely thing for you to say. I've spent many years now working with the Pentacolor products, and I really do feel that you should, you know, that it's good to share that knowledge rather than it being, kept just in my head. My head's a very strange place to be, as anyone who knows me can testify to. So there we are. Let's just carry on with these. There we are. As I say, we're time-wise, we are getting on, but that's cool. So we are, all components pretty much are put together. I'll discuss some options at the end for how you can alter the rim of the box if you so choose to do so. I'm conscious that one of the options is quite an expensive one, and so I'm going to make this as the base product thing, and then you can work from there and build up. There we are. So let's just lift that. Now, when you're lifting off antiquing gel, if you've got a very wet cloth that you've saturated in your antiquing gel, then common sense says that you're not going to lift off lots of the product. So you really do then need to walk it around. Now, this is a good example. That pink is not set completely solidly, so it's partially lifting up. So you just need to be careful. Or if you let it dry and then give it a coat of wax, of varnish, before you add anything else to it, or take a wet dish to something. So let's see which of these is nearly dry. I guess it won't matter if I squidge some of that green at this point, but you are definitely better off waiting. Oh, thank you, Crafty Dax. It's lovely. Talking about which, I have been busy. I have projects or sample projects for the retreat that I know you're going to made. So watch Lizzie's page, and you'll find out more about that at some point, I'm sure. There we are. Let's just give this a good covering. You could do these in stages. You do need to, as I say, once the antiquing gels are dry, then you will find that if you're not very careful, well, once it's dry, you can't shift it. The only option is to reprime and paint back over it. So that seems a bit daft, isn't it? So just be aware of that when you're working with these, that you do just need to. There we are. So I love these antiquing gels because minimum effort, and you've got all of that texture, and it looks like a piece of coloured lace, really, with all of that detailing in it. So that's where we're up to. Right. Last one of these to do. And is it extravagant to wipe everything off? Well, it depends on the look that you're going for. These pots are not hugely expensive for the volume, and I've had this one since they came out, which is at least 2 Christmases ago, at least 2, possibly 3 Christmases ago now. And it's probably, it's one of my go-to project, because I like the shabby effect rather than the grungy effect. The other colours are beautiful, but they are definitely more vintage toned. And so this works for me because it gives me that shabby chic feel that I really, really like. So let's just have a swap that to a different wipe, and then let's just wipe this back. There we are. And you can wipe back as little or as much as you want. And I might, yeah, I was contemplating adding actually some delicate paints to these, but actually there's so much white, I'm going to leave it at that on there. So let's lid that so it doesn't dry out. Let's pop that over there. She says covering her camera pieces with that, and then let's just give this a whiz dry, because we can't actually actually we can. Tell you what, that's the base, so we'll pop that back down, leave that to dry. So this is our lid of our box, and I'm wanting to add some embellishments on the top, and because I've got pink here, I'm wanting to add the blue frame. So this comes from the Precious collection, double-sided, but I'm rather liking those, and so I'm now just going to, sacrilege I hear you say, chop into this. Because that's going to allow me to have that where I want it. And I have some express glue here, which we'll add on to here. We'll then get this so that the roses are where they want to be. I'm going to pop that, turn that over, give that a little squidge. And then I am going to use my heavy body gel. I've got a textured surface here, and so I know that this needs to have something that's going to sit into all of those textures to get it to grip it properly. So, and I know that piece is moving around, and that's also fine. Let's just give that, and then we'll give it a little bit of a wriggle to get the paper into the right place before we set it down in a minute. There we are. So let's just pop that over there, and I'm using the matte. Let's just shuffle that picture down a little piece, and that frame is going to sit really nicely just into there. I've got some ordinary glue in here, and glue, most PVA glues dry shiny, so I'm just going to lift that up. And once the whole lot is dry and I'm happy that it's set, I would add some bonding primer, some pouring glaze into there so that the whole thing is shiny. So that can go there for the moment. Let us lid that. So I said that I wanted to create some keepsakey pieces. So we are going to add 2 back-to-back of the resin pieces, and this I happen to know, well, I have checked to make sure, but it does actually fit in my box base, because that's sort of important, isn't it, if we're going to be gifting things. And of course, right, I just need to dig up my hands, because there's a limit to how long I can carry on with yucky mucky hands. So Sarah's got turtle, green, blue, green, fire gold. I love the fire gold, red, purple, brass, bronze. Ooh, yes, I've seen your pieces with the chameleon peach. That's looking rather fantastic. So there we are. So I have, because why wouldn't I, some pieces of ribbon. So we're just going to do a little bit of joining pieces together. So let me just, I've got 2 pieces here. Don't want a really thick piece, but I do want a little hanging loop on my piece. So I'm just going to knot this together, she says, because we've all got ribbon in our stash, haven't we? And all got lots of it. I've got 4 pieces to pull through here. There we are. So let's give that. We've got all of that's nice and safe and secure. We'll go for a decent pair of scissors as opposed to those ones. And give this a little bit of a haircut. Okay. Have we cut this a little bit too short? We might have done. In fact, there we are. Well, there we are. Why don't we make life difficult for ourselves? There we are. Maybe we'll just trim you all at the same length. So I've got my I have got my glue gun by my side, but this is for expedience sake, ladies, rather than my preference. But it's just going to allow me to anchor my bits of ribbon into place. So I've got my loop. Like so, and let's just add another little bit of that and give that a squash down so that can hold. And then I am going to make sure I haven't got that glued, and then I'm going to use my heavy body gel to glue this, to stick this together. So you can see where the hot glue is already grabbing, inconsiderate though it might be. So I can now pop some of this in to here, around here, link this all the way through. It's just going to allow this to grab. The smoother that you cast your resin, the easier it will be to do this, and that can then go onto there, and I can give it a little bit of a squash and a little bit of a wriggle, and I now have myself a little hanging ornament. Those two are separating off at the moment, so I'm just going to give that a little bit of a knot. There we are. So I've got my pieces now for hanging that quite nicely. And I can take my little ribbon. I haven't got another of the blue, but I do have a little bit of the pink. Let's choose a longer piece of pink, because that's quite, there we are. Is that pink? Yes, this is a very soft, subtle pink. These are just shabby ribbons. This is just how I do my bows. 2 little bunny ears, fold them over, click them in, pull, and then I can pull this and tighten to get some nice even length loops. Give that a little bit of a haircut. Cut these pieces, and because this is going to go, so I've got a nice little shabby ribbon that can then go onto the top of there, and it's ribbon to ribbon, so I can use my hot glue gun to do that. But then I've got an ornament that will hang quite happily. So that is the keepsake number 1. I have a little heart here, and oops, she says, let's get rid of that, and a little rose. I've got other plans for those too. And I did have, but can I see them now? No. Answers on a postcard, please, as to what I might have put them. I did have out on my desk a pack of chunky magnets. But can I see them? Absolutely not. Oh, well, that's not helpful, is it? They can't have gone very far in amongst the chaos on this desk, but they certainly have gone walkabouts. And I think my other ones are too small. So I will find those. Actually, I can grab the smaller ones because I know exactly where they are. But I would... There we are. I have some really nice, thick, chunky magnets. I can see them. You see, hiding little monkeys. There we are. So like, yeah, well, it's a good way, isn't it, to do that? So you can then get magnets any size that you want, can't you? To much bigger ones, but I just thought that having a couple of, again, it's a different use for your molds, isn't it? To just pop, and I would paint the back of these clearly, but I'll do that off the live. So there we are. So we have some little magnets from there. Let's get rid of that. There we are. Let's take that out of the way. She says, making a mess every which way. There we are. So the top for me, it still looks a bit plain. You're saying plain. I can hear you coming. I can hear it happening. So there we are. Let's see if we can. Actually, I just don't think I've got enough of those ribbons out to do this. So we could do now. Let me just grab another piece of white ribbon. We've got plenty of that. Yeah, it's a good way of doing things. There we are. So you could wrap this. So the options for decorating the outside edge of the box would be some would you bend trim, shaped and cut to size. That would work quite nicely. There we are. That would work. You could use some velvet powders quite happily and give it a soft feel to the piece, or you could wrap ribbon around the edges of it depending on how you feel. So I'm going to add a little bow there just because I feel that it needs just that extra added detail. So I am going to add that with some hot glue because it's going to be easier to do that. So that's going to finish that bit. Now watch it all fall apart on me, because so I'm going to be very naughty at this point, and I am going to use hot glue. In reality, I'd let everything set and then I would use my gel medium to do that. So that's going to decorate the inside of my box. So we've got a pretty little book with a box there. We've got some little fridge magnets all in the heart theme, and we have a little box that just needs a little bit of sanding and the base painting. So there we are. So rather than paint that now and keep you here forever, I can put my little heart into there. It needs to dry properly before I do that. I can just see I've just squidged it. So that will go in my box ultimately, along with my two fridge magnets. That can tuck there, that can tuck there, and my box lid will go on. And then I can put some pouring greys into there, or some 3D varnish just to let that dry. So we've got a pretty shabby Valentine's-esque inspired make for this evening, with lots of little keepsakey pieces and a special box to keep them in. So I hope, ladies, that and gentlemen, that you have enjoyed the make this evening, that it inspires you to get your stuff out of your stash and to get creating. Let me just clear some of this mess out of the way, so that you can see more about what we've done. They will eventually get photographed, and I will eventually put them up on social media. We all know that I'm not very good at doing that. My next live for Pentart is on the 15th of February. So I hope that you'll be all happily join me then for the evening. So take care, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening. For the ladies in the States, I expect I will see you this evening on Terry Lightsey's page, Crafting Chaotix, at around 9 o'clock UK time. It's a fabulous place to be, and she uses lots of fabulous Pentart products. So take care for now. Bye-bye. Oops, I've clicked the wrong button. That doesn't surprise me.